I'm Andrea Giles, and you're listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, episode number 87, Lying and Mind Masking. Hello, and welcome to the Heal from Infidelity podcast, where courageous women learn not only to heal from their spouse's betrayal, but to become the boldest, truest, most decisive, and confident versions of themselves ever. If you know there's more for you than the life you're currently living, but don't quite know how to get there, you are in the right place. Stick around to learn how to create a life that will knock your own socks off. Is it possible? It is, and I'm here to show you how. I'm your host, Andrea Giles. Are you ready? Let's dive in. Hi, everybody. I hope that you are doing well. I am recording this episode from Las Vegas, where I am traveling for a certification that I'm doing. I am doing a certification to become a master relationship coach. It is going to be intense. It's a few days of in-person and then a whole year of deep training, learning. It's my favorite. I love it. I love taking what I've learned and bringing it right back to you. So I am going to go ahead and jump into this podcast episode, and I hope that everybody is doing well, and let's go. Okay. So today we're going to talk about lying and mind masking. And I want to say before I jump in that this episode might be a little bit difficult. I have to admit that even when I was preparing this episode, I had to walk away from it for a little bit because I could feel myself feeling a little bit heightened just studying about lying and mind masking. And I want you to know that you can do that too. That if you start listening to this episode and you feel a little bit frustrated or angry or sad or any kind of thing that comes up, you can push pause and you can come back to it later. But I do want you to listen to the whole thing because I think it will help you. Knowledge is power. When we understand what's going on, it empowers us to change what's going on. Okay? So come back to it if it feels a little bit upsetting at first. Come back to it. So lying and mind masking. So let's talk about lying. We all know what lying is. We've all done it. Lying is not telling the truth, right? It's when we intentionally don't tell the truth or we intentionally omit things and don't tell things that would have been important to know. And in the realm of infidelity, what constitutes infidelity from other things is that it's the intentional withholding of information. It's intentionally keeping somebody in the dark. So it's not just meeting up with somebody of the opposite sex to go to lunch or talking with them or spending time with them and then on and on and on to the lengths that infidelity goes to, but it's intentionally leaving your spouse in the dark. So that's part of infidelity. But another huge piece of infidelity is the lying. It's when we lie about it, things that we just straight up lie about. So why do we lie? On the surface, it might look like we lie because we don't want to get busted. We don't want to get in trouble. We don't want the consequences. But there's something that's a lot deeper than that. A lot of the reason why we lie is because we don't want people to see who we really are. We want to protect our egos. We want to protect our image. And in past episodes, I've talked about how hard we try to protect what we want other people to see of us. We want to shape other people's opinions of who we are. And it's a primal thing to be accepted, to be wanted. Everybody wants to belong. And so if it feels like there's going to be a threat to that for some reason, we tend to turn to lying. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes we turn to lying. We want to very much manage what people think of us. Now, in a small little context, look at social media. People spend great amounts of time making their social media look a certain way. Why? so that they can put into the minds of other people thoughts about them. Oh, look, it looks like they just get to go everywhere and do everything and that their life is really, really good, right? What we don't see is the fight they got in with their husband the night before, or the kid that just yelled at them, or the messes, or any of those things that they so carefully hide, right? And in some way, we all do this. We all try to protect what we let people see of us. Lying is when we take this up a notch and we tell something that's false to protect our own image so we don't let people see us. Now, to go a little bit deeper, a lot of what happens here is not only are we not wanting other people to see us, we are not wanting to see us. So if we can lie, it keeps the focus off of us so we don't have to see it. So we don't have to hold up that painful mirror of looking at ourselves and seeing who we are, or seeing the parts of us that we don't like. And so it becomes easier to lie. Something that is very, very common with infidelity is when people lie, not necessarily because they want to just keep going on in the things that they're doing, but because they don't want to face the facts of what they are involved in. They are trying to be in denial, trying to hide it from themselves, trying to downplay it, trying to ignore it, trying to say it's anything but what it is, because they don't want to actually face the truth of this part of them that they have allowed to become a thing in their life, this thing that they're participating in. And so it becomes easier to lie because then they themselves don't have to face the truth. They don't have to see it. So it's not just about throwing you off the trail, it's throwing themselves off the trail so that they don't have to deal with themselves. And again, to some extent, we all do this. It can be very hard to see yourself sometimes. And so we often do things to try to avoid it. If we can manipulate and manage what other people think of us by what we let them see, it helps us feel more in control, helps us feel more safe. Okay. Now let's talk about mind mapping. Actually, before I jump into that, I want to say one thing. Something that you have heard me say many times is how most of the time when we're dealing with infidelity, somehow, some way, we know that there's something going on. We feel uncomfortable. We feel like there's something off. There's a new kind of tension in the relationship. There's a kind of distance that feels different, an avoidance, a overly friendly or overly edgy or overly defensive, just different things that don't add up that we're trying to figure out. Okay. Sometimes we feel like we're being lied to and wonder about that. Sometimes things just don't add up and seem kind of sneaky. But there are times when I have clients who literally had no idea, who literally thought that they were doing so well, thought that they were so happy, thought that their marriage was great and that they were connected and communicating well. In these instances, which are not super common, but there are some, the person that you're dealing with is an expert at mind masking. Now, in another episode, I'm going to talk about something called mind mapping, which is where we track the behaviors of other people. That's how we know when there's something off. Mind masking is when we mask our own mind so that the person that we're dealing with can't know what's going on with us. It's very common. We all do it to some extent. It's basically when we're trying to hide how we feel, hide what we're thinking so other people can't see us. Now, for many of us, we learn to do this as children. For example, let's say that you want something really, really bad, but you're afraid that if you let your parents know how much you want it, that it will influence their decision somehow. So you play it down, dumb it down a little bit, or act like it's not that big of a deal. Okay, that's mind masking. We do it all the time. All of us do. Did you know that even 4-year-olds know how to mind mask? Little 4-year-olds know how to manipulate situations so that they can get away with things. It's when they learn to start lying, things like that. 4-year-olds, like we are brilliant at surviving and using our brains to protect us in tracking other people's behavior and in hiding what's going on in our brains to get us out of trouble or keep us out of trouble. Okay. So, mind mapping in regards to infidelity is when we hide what's going on with us. Okay. It's when we hide or when we more aggressively actively try to throw somebody off of our scent to get us out of trouble. Okay. So you've heard me talk about the therapist, David Schnarch. I've learned so much from him. He's one of my very favorites to study. And he wrote a book that you've heard me refer to before. It's called Brain Talk. Now, this book was used as a training book for therapists. So it's kind of a very thick, dense read. It can be very heavy sometimes to read. But there's a whole section in there about mind mapping, and I'm going to share some of it with you today. Okay, so in this book, he talks about what it takes to mask your mind. So I'm going to give you some of the thoughts of his and add my own to it, okay? Number 1, substitute false content. For example, if you stayed out late and your wife is wondering where you were, you have to do more to mask your mind than simply just not talking about it. You have to fill in the holes, okay? So this is where you substitute false content. You might say something like, I understand you're wondering where I was last night. I drank too much, but I did the right thing under the circumstances, which I knew you'd want me to do. I got some coffee and waited until I was sober enough to drive. So you're filling it in with false things, okay? 2, don't tamper with more of the truth than you need to. For example, in the same scenario above, I know I didn't come home until 4 a.m. Number 3, appear to be forthcoming, even eager to comply. You deserve a truthful answer. I know I didn't use good judgment, and I should have called a cab. Number 4, show a picture of your mind you know people want or expect to see. When your wife doesn't simply accept your story, you can respond, I'm getting defensive like I always do whenever you question my answers. You know I don't like to be cross-examined. Number 5, create plausible deniability. I had to wait a long time at the diner where I stopped because there was only one waitress. Number 6, take umbrage when you're caught withholding important information. I told you about the waitress at the diner. It was late and the diner was closing, so I offered her a ride home. I wasn't withholding anything. Now you're just accusing me of lying. Number 7, talk obliquely or abstractly and gloss over details. When the full picture emerges, which is usually quite different, you can claim, that was what I was talking about. Number 8, be convincing or confusing. You don't need to be accurate. How would you like it if every time you come home an hour late, I cross-examined you like this? Now, all of those things can be hard to deal with, hard to accept that loved ones have used these techniques to trick you, to mask what's actually true so you can't see it, to throw you off their scent, okay? In loving adult relationships, or when I say loving, I mean like marriage relationships, it's really important to recognize kind of some of the dynamics that are happening in your marriage and how these dynamics play out, okay? So lying and mind masking can be the same thing. They can be very much the same. And as you're growing in your relationship, trying to heal relationships, or even just trying to understand what happened, the more you can understand some of the things that kind of kept you in the dark, the better. The more that you know, the more you have the ability to change. Okay. Another part of mind masking is mind twisting. And in this book, David Schnarch talks about something called spaghetti brain. And as I have studied it, I'm like, oh, do I understand spaghetti brain? Okay. Spaghetti brain is where you really something to be true. And then you go have a discussion about it. And the way that it is handled turns your brain to mush, makes you feel like a crazy person. So, like in the example earlier about the husband getting home late, you might really know that his story doesn't add up. And then he comes home and he gives you this answer that makes you question what you know, makes it kind of turn on its head and go, wait a minute, I thought that this, but maybe I'm wrong. And then just like that, your brain is turned to mush. That's something that we do to each other. Okay. That's something that we do. So, what to do about it? I am going to give you a list of some things to do about it. If you practice these things, you will be better at catching lies. And this episode may seem a little heavier or a little darker than some of my other episodes, but I want you to understand, as always, your power in changing the dynamics in your relationship. And when we know how to handle certain things, how to ask the right questions, how to navigate lying and mind masking, whether the person decides to tell us the truth or not, whether they're engaged and wanting to fix things, it gives us more information. Living in the dark, hanging out in that spaghetti brain space won't get us any closer to healing. It will keep us stuck and confused. Okay, so I'm going to share with you some techniques shared by David Schnarch to improve when you're being mind masked and when you're being lied to. Okay. Number one, ask general questions at the start of a conversation to see how they define the situation and structure the content and style of their response. Then shift to open-ended, targeted questions that require specific details in the answers. Number two, don't interrupt when people attempt to answer, and don't make assumptions that fill in the gaps in their explanations. Allow them to fill out the story on their own. Number three, then ask them to tell their story from a different time perspective. You might say, I want to go back to your apology last night for forgetting my birthday 2 weeks ago. This is another example. When did you actually realize you forgot it? Once you get an answer, you follow up by asking, what did you do when you realized you forgot it? Okay, the reason for this is because events that are initially presented as being casually linked often have less connection when viewed this way, creating a need for a more adequate explanation. Okay, it's harder for people when they start lying to remember the order of things, exactly how they presented it, the timeline. And so when you start asking questions in that way, it's easier to spot what you're missing. Those are just a few things to try. If you do some Google searches, there are lots and lots of articles about lying, lots of articles that teach about interesting body language that happens with lying. And I myself have spent a lot of time looking at those things. I find it interesting, and also, I will admit, having raised many teenagers, it's something that I have needed to know and to understand. So, unfortunately, lying is something that is, of course, very, very common. It is something that we all do, whether by omission or by openly lying. We sometimes leave details out that we think might be hurtful to people. But what we're talking about in this episode is where we are leaving the big things out intentionally that we know the other person would want to know. It's not just details that don't matter. It's details that are game changers, like big details that change the game. Okay, that's what we're talking about here. So again, I want to reiterate that sometimes there are people who are so good at mind masking and so good at lying that you really could be married to them and literally have no idea what they're involved in, like no idea. They have gotten very good at their skill. And for a lot of people like this, part of the reason why they've gotten so good at it is because they had to as a survival mechanism. For example, if somebody grew up in a home where they got beat for different things, like for saying different things, for asking different things, if they felt threatened at all by something that they were thinking or by acting in a certain way, like if they acted overly happy or overly sad or anything like that, they would want to hide all of it and not let anyone see inside them at all because it didn't feel safe. If you're married to somebody like this, there's probably a reason they are that way, but they still have to own it and they still have to grow up from it. That is growing up and maturity. We all have to grow up. We all have to face our weaknesses, our darker sides, the parts of us that are harder to look at, and grow them up. Lying can be rehabilitated. People who lie can learn not to lie. But often it's from consequences and from being willing to really look at why they lie and being willing to recognize that they lie in the first place. Okay? You can help with this. You can call out lies right when you see them. You can say, that is not truthful, and tell why. Notice it, speak up. Sometimes people who lie tend to lie a lot about the silliest things. Like, it's so silly sometimes when you see little kids lie, because they lie about things that they don't need to lie about until it just gets nonsensical. Adults do it too. So you have influence over this by discussing and by asking deeper questions, by having them retrace things to see if the timeline still adds up. And if it doesn't, by calling it out. Okay? These are things that can be fixed if somebody wants to. They have to want it though. And as long as you live with people who intend to keep us in the dark, it is not a safe place because it tends to turn our brain into spaghetti. It can feel very confusing all the time to where we wonder what our reality actually is. Okay? So this is what I have for you today. I want you to just notice and see where there might be holes in stories and where you might be giving people slack, where maybe there are things that you could help them with in becoming more honest people. And of course, this goes for all of us. We all could stand to become more honest people, to not hide things, to let people see us, to let people know us, to be transparent. In any relationship that's trying to heal and grow, transparency is huge. So the more we can learn to drop our mask and be who we are, the more we let people in, the more we let them know us. Okay, that's all for today. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Heal from Infidelity podcast. If you would like to be kept in the know about upcoming free classes, new podcast episodes, and other ways of working with me, go subscribe to my weekly email. You can subscribe at andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. Again, it's andreagiles.com/lies-about-infidelity/. I will see you next time.